There is a moment usually late at night when everything you've been running from finally catches up with you. Not as noise, not as panic, but as silence. You lie there, eyes closed, body exhausted, and suddenly you realize something unsettling. You've spent your entire life trying to become someone, yet the one thing you're desperate for, peace, has been quietly waiting for you to stop trying at all. What if the exhaustion you feel isn't because you're broken, but because you've been carrying what was never yours to hold? What if the reason sleep feels so far away is the same reason fulfillment has always felt just out of reach? Tonight's story doesn't offer answers you need to remember. It offers something far more dangerous to the restless mind, a truth you may feel before you understand. And once you feel it, you may never look at your life, your thoughts, or your nights the same way again. Stay with me until the end, because the ending doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives like sleep itself, only when you finally stop resisting. If this kind of storytelling helps you slow down, let go, and return to yourself, please subscribe to Buddhism in every moment. Your support keeps this space alive and allows us to continue creating calm, meaningful stories for nights like this and many more to come. Now let's begin. The day doesn't end when the lights go off. It ends much later, when the noise inside you finally runs out of strength. This is the moment most people never talk about. The moment when the house is quiet, the phone is face down, the world has stopped asking anything from you, and yet something inside you is still wide awake. Not alert, not inspired, just tired in a way that sleep alone doesn't seem to touch. You're not lying here because you failed to manage your time better. You're lying here because being human is heavier than it looks from the outside. All day long, you've been holding yourself together. Holding opinions you didn't have time to examine. Holding emotions you postponed because there were emails to answer, people to reassure, expectations to meet. Holding a version of yourself that knows how to function, how to perform, how to keep going even when something inside quietly asks to slow down. And now at last there is nothing left to hold you up. Zen begins here, not in effort, not in discipline, but in this fragile pause, when the world finally loosens its grip and you are left alone with what remains. What remains is not chaos. It only feels that way because you've been moving for so long. Think about how silence feels when a busy street suddenly empties at night. The sound doesn't disappear, it dissolves. And in that dissolving, something else becomes noticeable. The hum beneath the traffic, the space that was always there but never had room to be felt. This moment before sleep is like that. You are not falling behind. You are arriving. There is a deep misunderstanding we carry into the night. We believe sleep must be earned. That rest is a reward for productivity. That calm should come after everything is resolved. But Zen gently turns this idea upside down. Rest is not the prize at the end of effort. Rest is what effort was trying to replace. You don't lie awake because you haven't done enough today. You lie awake because your system hasn't been given permission to stop doing. The body knows how to rest. The breath knows how to slow. The mind, however, has learned a different lesson. It learned that stillness is dangerous. That silence must be filled. That every pause is an opportunity to plan, replay, judge, or fix. So when the world grows quiet, the mind panics not because something is wrong, but because it has lost its instructions. Zen doesn't scold the mind for this. It doesn't try to silence it. It simply stops taking it so seriously. Notice how different that feels. You don't need to chase calm tonight. You don't need to meditate correctly. You don't need to understand anything you hear. All that is asked of you, if anything is asked at all, is to stop treating this moment like a problem. Right now, nothing needs to be improved. The room is as it is. Your breath is as it is. Your thoughts are as they are. And for the first time today, none of that requires your intervention. There is a strange relief in realizing that the day no longer needs you, that the world can carry on without your supervision for a few hours, that you don't have to hold yourself upright anymore. Zen has a quiet respect for this surrender. Not the dramatic kind. Not giving up on life, but giving up the idea that you must constantly manage it. Think of how the ocean behaves at night. The tides still move. The waves still rise and fall. But no one stands at the shore trying to correct them. No one tells the water how to be water. Your inner world is no different. Thoughts will come. Sensations will shift. Memories may surface, uninvited. None of this means you are doing the night wrong. In Zen, the moment before sleep is not a gap between meaningful activities. It is a teacher in its own right. It shows you how much effort you've been carrying unnecessarily. It reveals how rarely you allow yourself to exist without direction. It reminds you gently, honestly, that you were never meant to be in control all the time. There is a reason the most unsettling thoughts often appear now. During the day, they were drowned out by movement. At night, they finally have space. But space is not the enemy. Space is where things soften. When you stop running, you don't crash. You decelerate. The nervous system begins to notice that nothing is chasing it. The body starts to release tensions it didn't even realize it was holding. The breath deepens not because you forced it, but because it was waiting. This is not something you make happen. It is something that happens when you stop interrupting it. Zen does not rush this process. It does not count breaths. It does not demand focus. It trusts what you already are. You may feel a subtle ache as the day drains out of you. That ache is not sadness. It is honesty. It is the feeling of laying down burdens you forgot you were carrying. The roles loosen. The labels fade. The story of who you are today slowly dissolves into something simpler. A body breathing. A mind unwinding. A presence that does not need to explain itself. This is why the night feels intimate. Why it can feel vulnerable. Why it can feel strangely emotional without a clear reason. You are closer to yourself here than at any other time. Zen doesn't ask you to analyze this closeness. It invites you to rest inside it. You don't need to reach the end of the story tonight. You don't need to resolve the meaning of your life. You don't need to prepare for tomorrow yet. Tomorrow will arrive on its own. Right now, the only truth that matters is simple: you are allowed to stop. Stop striving. Stop monitoring. Stop rehearsing who you need to be. The world has loosened its grip. You can loosen yours too. And if sleep comes, let it come. If it takes its time, let it take its time. Zen has no deadline. It knows that the deepest changes don't happen when we push forward, but when we finally lie still long enough to feel what has always been here beneath the noise. This moment before sleep is not empty. It is full of quiet permission. Permission to be unfinished. Permission to be uncertain. Permission to rest without explanation. Stay here. Nothing else is required. Most of what exhausts you never shows up on a calendar. It isn't the meetings, the traffic, or the long hours alone that weigh the heaviest. It's what you carry quietly, without ever questioning whether it still belongs to you. The expectations you absorbed years ago and never set down. The identities you learned to protect so well that they now feel inseparable from you. The unspoken rules about who you should be by now. How far along you should feel. How calm or confident or certain you should appear. These things don't announce themselves as burdens. They disguise themselves as responsibility, maturity, strength. Zen invites you to look again. Imagine walking all day with a backpack you forgot to take off. At first, the weight feels normal. Then it feels necessary. Eventually, it feels like part of your body. You stop noticing the strain because it has become familiar. You assume this is simply what moving through the world requires. But familiarity is not the same as truth. Much of what you are carrying was handed to you before you were ready to choose. Ideas about success. Ideas about worth. Ideas about what makes a life respectable or meaningful. Some of them once helped you survive. Some helped you belong. Some helped you feel safe. But survival strategies are heavy when they outlive their purpose. Zen does not accuse you of carrying too much. It understands why you did. It simply asks a quieter question: do you still need to hold all of this right now? Notice how rarely you ask that. You wake up already holding something. A sense of urgency. A mental list. A subtle tension in the chest that says, there's something I must not forget to be. You carry it through the day like a background noise, rarely loud enough to confront, always present enough to drain you. And when night comes, you don't suddenly become restless for no reason. You become aware of the weight you were too busy to feel. This is why sleep can feel elusive. Not because your body resists rest, but because your system hasn't been taught how to put things down. Zen sees this clearly. It doesn't ask you to throw your burdens away. It knows that force only creates more strain. Instead, it brings your attention to the simple fact of holding. What are you gripping so tightly that your hands have forgotten how to open? Perhaps it's the need to be understood. Perhaps it's the habit of replaying conversations to prove something you never needed to prove. Perhaps it's the belief that letting go means losing control, when in truth, it means recovering energy you didn't know you were spending. There is a subtle fear beneath all this holding. A fear that if you loosen your grip, something essential will collapse, that you'll fall behind, that you'll disappoint, that you'll become irrelevant or unseen. Zen doesn't dismiss this fear. It sits with it long enough to notice something important. Nothing collapses when you stop carrying what was never meant to be permanent. The world does not require your constant vigilance. Your worth does not depend on your ability to maintain tension. The self you are afraid of losing is often the very thing exhausting you. Think about how the body behaves when it trusts the ground. Muscles soften. Breath deepens. Support appears not because you demanded it, but because you stopped resisting it. The same is true internally. When you stop carrying every expectation forward into the present moment, something unexpected happens. You don't disappear. You become more available, more responsive, more alive in a way that doesn't feel forced. Zen calls this returning to what is essential. Not stripping life down to nothing, but removing what no longer serves the moment you're actually in. You don't need to carry yesterday's judgments into tonight. You don't need to hold tomorrow's fears while your body is asking to rest. You don't need to rehearse a version of yourself that exists only in someone else's imagination. These are not acts of responsibility. They are habits of overburdening. The night is generous. It offers you a chance to practice putting things down without consequences. No one is watching. Nothing is being evaluated. You don't have to explain why you are tired or justify why you need rest. You are allowed to be unguarded here. Zen is not asking you to become lighter by force. It simply invites honesty. What would happen if, just for this moment, you admitted how much you've been carrying? Not with drama, not with self-pity, just with clarity. You might notice a quiet sadness beneath the weight, a grief for how long you've been holding yourself together without support. That sadness doesn't mean something is wrong. It means something true is finally being felt. When you acknowledge the burden, you don't increase it. You begin to loosen it. This is the paradox Zen understands deeply. Awareness reduces effort without trying to. You don't need to decide what to drop forever. Tonight is not about life decisions. It's about recognizing that rest requires release, and release begins with permission. Permission to stop being the one who holds everything up. Permission to let the moment carry you instead. The invisible weight does not disappear all at once. It softens. It shifts. It becomes less personal, less defining. And in that softening, space opens. Space to breathe without managing the breath. Space to exist without narrating your existence. Space to feel supported without understanding how. Zen trusts this space. It knows that when you stop carrying what you don't need, what remains is not emptiness, but ease. Ease doesn't arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly, like a sigh you didn't realize you were holding back. You don't need to carry yourself into sleep. You can arrive lighter than you were a moment ago. And that is enough for tonight. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from trying to be calm. Not the honest tiredness of a long day, but a deeper fatigue, the kind that appears when you've been pushing yourself to feel a certain way. To relax. To let go. To finally arrive at peace, as if it were a destination you could reach through better technique or stronger will. This is where many people misunderstand rest. They believe peace is something earned through effort, that if they just try harder, breathe better, think less, understand more, the mind will eventually obey. But effort, when aimed at peace, often produces the opposite. It tightens what needs to soften. It turns rest into another task to complete. Zen noticed this long before modern life made it obvious. You cannot force stillness without creating strain. You cannot command the mind to be quiet without giving it another job to do. You cannot chase peace without reinforcing the belief that it is missing. This is why trying to sleep can feel like a battle. The body knows how to rest, but the mind has been trained to optimize everything. Even relaxation becomes something to manage, something to succeed at. So you lie there, silently negotiating with yourself. Just one more deep breath. Just stop thinking. Just relax your shoulders. And with each instruction, the system tightens a little more, confused by the pressure to let go on command. Zen does not fight this tension. It sees the misunderstanding beneath it. Peace is not created by effort. Effort is what peace begins to dissolve. Think of how muddy water becomes clear. You don't stir it harder. You stop stirring. Clarity appears not because you made it happen, but because you stopped interfering with the process that was already underway. The same is true here. The agitation you feel is not a personal failure. It is the natural response of a system that has been pushed too long, even in the direction of something good. The mind is not broken for resisting peace. It is simply tired of being told what to do. Zen offers a different posture, one that feels almost counterintuitive in a culture built on effort. Instead of trying to calm the mind, you allow the mind to be as it is. Instead of forcing the breath, you notice it moving on its own. Instead of fixing restlessness, you let restlessness reveal its nature. This is not giving up. It is stepping out of the way. There is a profound relief in realizing that nothing needs to change right now for peace to be possible. The mind does not need to improve itself before rest can begin. The body does not need to perform relaxation correctly. Effort has its place. It builds, protects, achieves. But peace is not something that needs building. It is uncovered when effort relaxes its grip. You may notice a moment of discomfort when you stop trying. A sense of vulnerability. Without effort, the usual sense of control loosens. Thoughts may wander. Sensations may feel unfamiliar. The system is recalibrating, learning that it does not have to be managed every second. Zen trusts this recalibration. It understands that awareness does not need to be forced to function. Like light, it shines naturally when nothing blocks it. Like sleep, it arrives when conditions are right, not when demanded. The habit of effort runs deep. Even now, there may be a part of you listening closely. trying to do this correctly, hoping for a specific result. Zen meets that part with kindness, not correction. There is nothing wrong with wanting peace. The mistake is believing peace requires effort to exist. What if tonight you didn't work toward calm? What if you allowed calm to notice you instead? The body begins to soften when it senses no further demands. The breath deepens not because you instructed it to, but because it finally has room. The mind slows not because you stopped it, but because it no longer needs to defend its activity. This slowing is not dramatic. It is subtle, almost easy to miss. A small release in the jaw, a warmth spreading through the chest, a pause between thoughts that feels wider than before. Zen is attentive to these small shifts. It knows that transformation rarely announces itself loudly. You don't need to push your way into rest. You don't need to earn permission to stop. The most radical act right now is to let effort rest alongside you. Allow the night to carry what effort has been holding. Allow awareness to do what it has always known how to do without instruction. Peace does not arrive when you conquer the mind. It arrives when the mind is no longer asked to perform. And in that letting go not of life, but of unnecessary striving, something gentle begins to take over. Not because you tried, but because you finally stopped. There is a sentence many people carry quietly through their lives, rarely spoken out loud, but constantly felt. Something is wrong with me. It doesn't always appear as words. Sometimes it shows up as a subtle restlessness, a sense that you're behind an invisible schedule. Sometimes it feels like guilt when you rest, or disappointment when you slow down, or shame when you can't explain why you're tired, even though everything is fine. This belief didn't come from nowhere. It grew slowly, shaped by comparison, expectations, and the constant message that life is a project to be improved. That if you're not becoming better, calmer, more successful, more fulfilled, then you must be failing in some quiet way. Zen looks at this belief gently and sees the pain underneath it. The pain of constantly measuring yourself against an idea that was never meant to fit a living human being. Nothing in nature apologizes for being incomplete. A tree does not worry that it hasn't grown fast enough this season. The sky does not judge itself for being cloudy. The ocean does not question whether its waves are acceptable today. Yet somehow, we learn to believe that our inner weather should always be clear, productive, and controlled. Zen does not agree. It does not see confusion as a defect. It does not see sadness as an error. It does not see uncertainty as a flaw that needs correction. What if the discomfort you feel is not evidence that something is wrong with you, but evidence that you are alive, responsive, and deeply human? The urge to fix yourself often comes from a misunderstanding of what healing actually is. We assume healing means replacing who we are with a better version. Zen suggests something far more radical. Healing begins when you stop treating yourself as a problem. This can feel unsettling at first. If nothing is wrong, why does it hurt? If nothing is broken, why does it feel so heavy sometimes? Zen does not deny pain. It simply separates pain from self-judgment. Pain is part of living. Suffering multiplies when pain is layered with the belief that it shouldn't be happening. So much of your energy has been spent trying to correct yourself back into acceptability. Trying to think the right thoughts. Feel the right emotions. Live the right kind of life. And when you inevitably fall short of that imagined standard, the quiet verdict returns, I'm not enough yet. Zen steps in here not with answers, but with a pause. What if you didn't need to justify your existence tonight? What if rest didn't require improvement? What if you were allowed to be exactly as you are, without explanation? This question alone can feel like a release. Notice how the body responds when it is no longer under evaluation. The shoulders drop slightly. The breath moves more freely. The inner tension that comes from self-surveillance begins to loosen. You were never meant to live as a constant self-audit. The idea that something is wrong with you often hides a deeper truth. You've been asking yourself to live against your own rhythm, to move faster than you're ready for, to stay strong when you needed softness, to stay composed when you needed space to unravel. Zen does not rush this unraveling. It sees it as a return. You are not broken for feeling lost at times. You are not defective for needing rest. You are not failing because life feels complicated. The belief that something is wrong is often inherited, not discovered. Passed down through subtle cues and unspoken standards. Zen invites you to question it not aggressively, but honestly. When did you decide you were a problem to solve? And what would happen if you let that idea rest tonight? This is not about settling for less or abandoning growth. It is about recognizing that growth does not require self-rejection as fuel. The most profound changes occur when we feel safe enough to stop defending ourselves. Zen understands this safety deeply. It knows that peace cannot emerge in a mind that believes it is fundamentally flawed. Acceptance is not indulgence, it is the ground that allows clarity to appear. You don't need to become worthy of rest. You don't need to earn permission to exist without fixing yourself. The night holds you without conditions. The breath continues without approval. Awareness remains steady, regardless of how you judge yourself. There is nothing you need to correct in this moment. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be uncertain. You are allowed to be exactly where you are without turning it into a problem. Zen does not promise that life will suddenly make sense. It offers something quieter and more reliable. The freedom to stop arguing with yourself. And in that quiet ceasefire, something soft and real begins to surface, not because you forced it to, but because nothing was pushing it away. There is nothing wrong with you. Tonight, that truth is enough. Your thoughts are not trying to hurt you. They feel intrusive, relentless, sometimes even cruel, but they are not enemies. They are movements. Weather passing through an inner sky that has been mistaken for the storm itself. Most of us were never taught this distinction. We learned to believe that every thought deserves attention, that whatever appears in the mind must mean something urgent about who we are or what we should do next. So when worry arrives, we assume danger. When regret appears, we assume failure. When fear speaks, we listen as if it holds authority. Zen looks at this habit with quiet compassion. It sees how easily we confuse the voice in the mind with truth. How quickly a passing thought becomes a verdict, a story, a future we feel forced to prepare for. But thoughts are not commands. They are not predictions. They are not instructions carved into reality. They are weather. Consider how the sky holds a storm. Dark clouds move in. Rain falls. Thunder passes through. Yet the sky does not become the storm. It remains spacious, untouched by the intensity of what moves across it. Your awareness is like that. Thoughts rise and fall within it, shaped by memory, stress, habit, and imagination. Some are gentle, some are sharp. Some repeat themselves endlessly, hoping to be believed. But belief is not required. The suffering begins when we step inside the storm and forget the sky exists at all. Zen does not ask you to stop thinking. That would only create another struggle. It invites something subtler and far more powerful: noticing. Noticing that thoughts appear on their own. Noticing that they change without your permission. Noticing that even the most convincing thought eventually dissolves. This noticing does not argue. It does not correct. It does not chase clarity. It simply watches. At first, this can feel unsettling. If you are not engaging your thoughts, who are you? If you don't follow every mental thread, what keeps you safe? Zen understands this fear. It knows that the mind learned to stay busy as a form of protection. Running scenarios. preparing defenses, replaying conversations, predicting outcomes. But preparation has become habit, and habit has become noise. When you stop feeding the noise, the mind does not collapse. It rests. You might notice a thought drift by that once would have pulled you into a long inner argument. Tonight, you let it pass. Not because you are suppressing it, but because you no longer mistake it for a crisis. This is not indifference. It is perspective. You begin to sense the space around the thought, the awareness that notices it without becoming it. That awareness has always been here, steady and unchanged, even while the mental weather shifted endlessly. Zen trusts this awareness more than any particular idea that passes through it. You don't need to make sense of every thought before you sleep. You don't need to solve the future or rewrite the past. Thoughts that demand resolution now are often echoes of a system that hasn't yet realized it is safe to rest. The night teaches this gently. As the world grows quiet, thoughts may grow louder at first, like waves rising when the wind changes. This does not mean they are becoming more important. It means they finally have space to be seen. And when they are seen without resistance, without belief, they lose their urgency. A thought without belief is just a sound. A memory without identification is just an image. A fear without ownership is just sensation. Zen does not rush this recognition. It allows it to unfold naturally, the way fog lifts when the sun warms the air, not all at once, but inevitably. You don't have to push your thoughts away. You don't have to follow them. You don't have to understand them. You only have to let them be what they are, passing phenomena. The sky does not need to chase away clouds to remain vast. Awareness does not need to control thoughts to remain peaceful. This realization is not dramatic. It is quiet, almost ordinary, and yet it changes everything. You begin to feel less trapped inside your head, less defined by mental noise, less compelled to react to every internal movement. There is room again. Room for the breath to slow on its own. Room for the body to sink into the bed. Room for the mind to wander without dragging you along. Zen knows that sleep comes more easily when thoughts are allowed to pass rather than fought. Not because the mind becomes empty, but because it stops being crowded with importance. Tonight, let your thoughts move like weather across a wide inner sky. Let storms pass without commentary. Let clear moments come without attachment. You are not the storm. You are not the clouds. You are the space that holds them all without effort. And that space has never needed to sleep to be at peace. It only needed to be remembered. There is a quiet promise many people live by, even if they've never spoken it out loud. Someday, things will feel better. Someday I'll finally relax. Someday life will slow down enough for me to feel at peace. That word someday sounds harmless, hopeful, even. But Zen sees something hidden inside it. A subtle postponement of living. A habit of placing peace just far enough away that it never quite arrives. We are taught to believe that calm belongs to the future, that once the right conditions are met, more stability, more clarity, more success, fewer problems, then rest will make sense. Until then, we endure. We push forward. We tell ourselves this tension is temporary, even as it quietly becomes permanent. Zen does not reject goals or growth. It simply notices the cost of tying your inner well-being to a future moment that keeps moving. Notice how often peace is delayed by a requirement. When I finish this project. When my finances are less stressful. When I understand myself better. When life becomes simpler. Each condition feels reasonable on its own. Together, they form a life spent waiting. And waiting has weight. It creates a low-level anxiety that hums beneath everything you do. A sense that the present moment is never quite sufficient. That something essential is missing right now, and that missing piece lives somewhere ahead. Zen gently questions this assumption. If peace depends on a better version of your life, what happens to the one you're living right now? If calm is reserved for a future self, who is allowed to rest tonight? The habit of postponement is deeply ingrained, especially in a culture that values progress above presence. You are encouraged to endure discomfort now for the sake of a promised ease later, to sacrifice the present in service of an imagined arrival. But Zen asks a quieter, more unsettling question: what if the arrival never comes? Not because you failed, but because peace was never waiting at the end of improvement. What if it has always been available, overlooked because it didn't look like a reward? This can feel difficult to accept. The mind protests. Surely circumstances matter. Surely a better life would feel easier. Zen does not deny that conditions influence experience. It simply refuses to let them dictate your right to be at ease. You don't need a different life to feel peace. You need a different relationship with the one you have. Peace does not come from the absence of challenges. It comes from the absence of constant negotiation with the present. From no longer arguing that this moment should be something other than what it is. The waiting itself is exhausting. It keeps you leaning forward mentally, never quite settling into where you are. Even during moments of quiet, the mind whispers about what's next. What still needs to be achieved before you're allowed to exhale fully. Zen recognizes this leaning as a form of tension. When you live for someday, now becomes a hallway you rush through rather than a place you inhabit. Even rest becomes strategic, something you do to prepare for the future, rather than something you allow because you are here. But the body does not live in someday. The breath does not exist in someday. Awareness does not wait for permission from the future. They are always here, responding to this moment alone. There is a profound relief in realizing that peace does not require your life to be fixed before it can be felt. That calm does not need ideal circumstances to appear. That you don't have to earn rest by reaching a milestone. Zen does not ask you to give up your hopes. It asks you to stop using them as reasons to withhold yourself from the present. What if tonight is not a stepping stone to a better night later? What if this moment, imperfect and unfinished, is already enough to rest in? This shift does not happen through logic. It happens through permission. Permission to stop waiting for your life to start feeling like your life. Permission to let go of the idea that peace belongs somewhere else. Permission to meet this moment without conditions. The future will come whether you chase it or not. Tomorrow will arrive with its own responsibilities, its own opportunities for effort and growth. But tonight does not need to be sacrificed to it. Zen understands that the deepest peace comes not when life becomes easier, but when the demand for it to be easier relaxes. You don't need a better life to feel peace. You need to stop postponing yourself. Let this moment be complete enough to rest in. Let now be sufficient, even if it isn't perfect. Because peace has never been hiding in the future. It has been quietly waiting for you to stop looking past the present. There is a quiet relief that comes when you realize you don't actually need as much as you've been told. Not less money, or fewer possessions, or a smaller life in some dramatic sense, but less pressure inside. Less grasping. Less insisting that things must be a certain way before you're allowed to feel okay. Zen has always been drawn to this simplicity, not because it rejects the world, but because it sees how easily we exhaust ourselves by wanting more than the moment can give. Wanting on its own is not the problem. Clinging is. Clinging to outcomes. Clinging to recognition. Clinging to the belief that fulfillment is just one more achievement away. Over time, wanting hardens into tension. The mind stays busy measuring what is missing, comparing what is present to what could be better. Even when something good arrives, it doesn't land softly. It is immediately evaluated, protected, or used as a stepping stone to the next desire. Zen notices how heavy this becomes. Not heavy in an obvious way, but in a constant, background strain. The kind that keeps you slightly on edge even during moments that should feel satisfying. The kind that whispers, "Don't get too comfortable, this isn't enough yet." The beauty of wanting less is not about lowering your standards. It's about discovering how much freedom lives beneath unnecessary wanting. When you want less, you don't become passive. You become present. You begin to see how much of your energy has been spent reaching forward mentally, even when your body is already here. You notice how often enjoyment is postponed, because you're waiting for it to be complete, impressive, or permanent. Zen invites a different relationship with desire. Instead of asking, "How do I get more?" it asks, "What happens if I stop tightening around what I already have?" There is a softness that appears when you no longer need every moment to justify itself. When you stop demanding that life constantly prove its value to you. This softness is not resignation. It is relief. You don't have to extract meaning from everything. You don't have to optimize every experience. You don't have to turn peace into a possession. Simplicity, in this sense, is not about removing things from your life. It is about removing the internal commentary that says more is always required. Think of how the body responds when it is no longer bracing for the next thing. The breath becomes unforced. The muscles loosen without instruction. The mind stops scanning for what's missing and begins to rest inside what's here. Zen trusts this resting. It understands that the nervous system calms not when it acquires more security, but when it stops anticipating loss. That contentment is not the result of having everything you want, but of no longer needing the moment to be different. Wanting less does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping. You care without anxiety. You enjoy without fear of losing. You participate without needing control. This kind of simplicity is deeply countercultural. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't compete. It doesn't rush. It quietly undermines the belief that fulfillment is fragile and must be constantly defended. Zen sees how much effort goes into maintaining the illusion of enough. The careful planning, the constant self-checking, the fear that if you let go, something important will slip away. But what actually slips away when you want less is the noise, the inner bargaining, the constant reaching, the sense that peace must be chased. In its place, something steadier emerges, a quiet satisfaction that doesn't depend on circumstances lining up perfectly. A feeling of sufficiency that doesn't need to be announced or protected. You begin to recognize how much you already have, not in possessions, but in capacity. The capacity to breathe, to feel, to notice, to rest. Zen does not promise that life will become simple. It offers something more realistic and more generous. It offers simplicity within life. The simplicity of meeting each moment without demanding more than it can give. The simplicity of allowing joy when it appears and letting it go when it moves on. The simplicity of trusting that you are not lacking something essential just because you feel incomplete. Wanting less does not shrink your life. It expands the space inside it. As the night deepens, you don't need to empty your desires or make vows of detachment. You only need to notice how much effort goes into wanting and how little effort is required to rest. For now, let the wanting soften. Let the reaching pause. Let this moment be enough to lie down inside. There is a quiet beauty in not needing more. And that beauty is already here. There is a kind of pain we are taught to fear more than any other, the pain that doesn't have a clear reason, a clear fix, or a clear ending. Sadness that arrives without explanation. Heaviness that settles in the chest for days or weeks. A quiet emptiness that makes even gentle moments feel distant. We call these emotions problems. We label them obstacles. We treat them as intruders that must be removed before life can continue as it should. Zen sees them differently. It does not romanticize darkness, but it does not exile it either. It recognizes something we often forget: emotions are not moral events. They are movements of energy, responses to life unfolding in ways the mind cannot always organize or control. The suffering begins when we decide certain emotions are unacceptable. When sadness appears, we ask, "What's wrong with me?" When heaviness lingers, we assume we've failed at healing. When joy fades, we panic, believing we've lost something essential. Zen gently interrupts this pattern. What if dark emotions are not enemies to be defeated, but messages that need space to move? Think of winter. The earth does not apologize for becoming cold. Trees do not panic when their leaves fall. Growth does not disappear, it retreats, conserving energy, preparing for something unseen. We understand this intuitively in nature, yet resist it fiercely in ourselves. We expect constant brightness from an inner world that is alive, cyclical, and responsive. We demand spring from a system that needs winter. Zen teaches that darkness is not the opposite of peace. Resistance is. When you fight sadness, it hardens. When you fear emptiness, it deepens. When you label certain emotions as unacceptable, they stay longer, asking to be acknowledged. This does not mean you give up on healing or remain passive in pain. Zen is not indifference. It is intimacy with what is present. To sit with a difficult emotion does not mean drowning in it. It means allowing it to be felt without turning it into an identity. You are not your sadness. You are not your heaviness. You are the awareness that feels them, and awareness is vast enough to hold far more than you think. There is often wisdom hidden inside emotional darkness, but it does not reveal itself under interrogation. It speaks when it feels safe. Sometimes sadness slows you down because something in your life has been moving too fast. Sometimes emptiness appears when old meanings no longer fit and new ones haven't formed yet. Sometimes heaviness is the body's way of asking for rest that words could not request. Zen listens to these signals without trying to correct them. When you stop fighting an emotion, you may notice something surprising: it begins to change on its own. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, like weather shifting when pressure systems move. Even grief, when allowed, breathes. The fear we have of dark emotions often comes from believing they will last forever if we let them in. Zen offers a quieter truth: what is allowed to move, moves. What is resisted, stays. There is no emotion that remains unchanged when it is fully met. This meeting requires gentleness, not strength. A willingness to be present without demanding resolution. A trust that your inner world is not broken, even when it feels uncomfortable. Zen understands that healing is not about eliminating pain. It is about ending the war against it. The night is a particularly honest time for emotions. When distractions fade, what has been waiting beneath the surface often rises. This can feel frightening, especially if you've spent years staying busy to avoid these encounters. But the night is not cruel. It is revealing. It shows you what needs care, not correction. It brings forward what needs rest, not resistance. You don't have to analyze your emotions tonight. You don't need to trace them back to their origin or turn them into lessons. You only need to stop pushing them away. Let sadness sit beside you without explanation. Let heaviness exist without judgment. Let the quiet ache be what it is: a part of the human experience, asking to be felt. Zen trusts that the heart knows how to process what the mind cannot solve. Dark emotions do not mean you are moving backward. They do not cancel your growth. They do not disqualify you from peace. They are part of the rhythm of being alive. When you stop treating them as enemies, they soften. When you allow them to belong, they lose their sharpness. When you welcome them without fear, they eventually pass, often leaving behind clarity, tenderness, and a deeper sense of compassion for yourself. Tonight, you don't need to feel better. You only need to feel honestly. The darkness does not need to be fixed before you can rest. It only needs to be allowed. And in that allowance, something inside you finally exhales. There is a moment that arrives quietly, often unnoticed, when the running finally slows. Not because you forced it to stop. Not because you reached an answer, but because the effort to keep going ran out of momentum. This is not collapse. It is remembering. For so long, movement felt necessary. Thinking felt protective. Planning felt responsible. You learned to stay slightly ahead of yourself, scanning for what might be needed next, what might go wrong, what must be handled before you could relax. And then, without warning, there is nothing left to chase. The mind pauses not in obedience, but in relief. Zen has always pointed to this moment, not as something rare or mystical, but as something deeply familiar. Stillness is not created. It is revealed when the noise no longer needs to perform. Think of a lake at dusk. All day, wind ripples the surface. Leaves fall. Birds pass overhead. The water moves constantly, reflecting fragments of light and shadow. But when evening settles, the wind eases. The surface becomes clear not because the lake worked at it, but because the conditions softened. Your inner world follows the same laws. Stillness has always been here, beneath the motion. It was never absent. It was simply covered by urgency, by habit, by the belief that you must always be doing something to deserve being here. When the running slows, you don't disappear. You don't lose yourself. You discover the ground that was holding you the entire time. At first, this stillness can feel unfamiliar, almost exposed. Without the constant movement of thought, there is nothing to lean against. No story to manage. No role to maintain. Zen understands why this feels vulnerable. When the mind stops running, it can no longer distract you from presence. You begin to feel your body more clearly, the weight of the bed beneath you, the rise and fall of breath, the quiet pulse of life continuing without instruction. This presence does not demand attention. It simply is. The fear many people have of stillness is the fear of being alone with themselves. But Zen reveals a gentler truth: you are never alone in stillness. You are accompanied by awareness itself, steady, patient, and untouched by the chaos it observes. Awareness does not rush. It does not evaluate. It does not need reassurance. It holds thoughts when they arise and remains when they fade. It is equally present in motion and in rest. When you stop running, awareness does not vanish. It becomes obvious. This is why stillness feels both ordinary and profound. There is nothing new in it, yet it changes how everything else is experienced. The mind no longer feels like a battlefield. The body no longer braces for what's next. Even discomfort softens when it is no longer resisted. Zen does not instruct you to remain still. It simply points out that stillness appears naturally when there is no longer a reason to flee. Tonight, there is nowhere you need to go. Nothing you need to prepare for. Nothing you need to solve before resting. The future can wait. The past has already spoken. What remains is this quiet presence that has never left you, even when you forgot it was there. You may notice spaces between thoughts growing wider, not empty, but open. You may feel a gentle heaviness in the body, not fatigue, but grounding. You may sense time loosening its grip, no longer pulling you forward. Zen recognizes this as the body's natural intelligence reclaiming its rhythm. Stillness is not sleep, but sleep often arrives through it. Not because you tried to rest, but because there was nothing left to interfere. You don't need to hold on to this stillness. You don't need to protect it. The moment you grasp it, it becomes movement again. Let it come and go like everything else. The truth Zen points to is simple and unwavering. What you are beneath the running has always been enough. You were never meant to outrun yourself. You were never required to stay busy to be worthy of rest. You were never separate from the stillness you've been searching for. As the night deepens, allow yourself to remain where you are, not striving, not fixing, not reaching, just resting as the awareness that has been here all along. Nothing more is needed. Stillness has already arrived. There comes a point when even the quiet searching grows tired. Not because it failed, but because it has nothing left to look for. The mind, so accustomed to moving toward something, finally realizes there is nowhere else it needs to go, no conclusion to reach, no final understanding to secure before rest is allowed. This realization does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives like a soft settling, like a long-held breath finally released without instruction. Zen has always pointed here not to an ending, but to a resting place that was never separate from the journey. Nothing left to do does not mean nothing matters. Nowhere to go does not mean life has ended. It means the moment no longer needs your effort to be complete. So much of life has been lived as preparation. Preparing for success. Preparing for stability. Preparing for a version of yourself that will finally feel at home in the world. But home was never a future achievement. It has always been this awareness, this presence, this quiet being that does not need improvement to exist. When you finally stop moving toward peace, peace is revealed not as an experience, but as the space in which all experiences occur. You don't enter it. You recognize it. The body understands this deeply. As sleep approaches, it does not ask questions. It does not evaluate progress. It simply releases control, trusting the intelligence that has carried it through every night before this one. Zen mirrors this trust. You don't disappear when you sleep. You don't lose yourself. You return to something more fundamental than the stories you carry during the day. The roles fade. The identities soften. The sense of needing to hold yourself together gently dissolves. This is not escape. It is return. Return to a state where nothing is being demanded of you, where you are not required to perform clarity or strength or understanding, where existence does not need justification. Zen does not ask you to hold onto this state. Holding would already be too much effort. It invites you to rest as life itself, unmanaged, uncorrected, unobserved. Even awareness, at this point, does not strain to stay awake. It relaxes its edges, content to be present without focus. There is a profound safety in realizing that you do not need to monitor yourself into sleep. That rest is not something you fall into by doing it right, but something that happens when you stop interfering with what is natural. You have done enough today. You have carried enough. You have understood enough. There is nothing left to prove. Nothing left to resolve before you are allowed to let go. Zen does not frame this as an achievement. It is not something to remember or repeat tomorrow. It is simply the recognition that for this moment, life does not need your participation. The night will hold you. The breath will continue. The heart will keep its rhythm without instruction. You can trust this. As sleep comes or as rest deepens in its own time, there is no final message to grasp. No lesson to memorize. No ending to arrive at. Only this gentle truth, felt rather than thought: you are not behind. You are not unfinished. You are not missing anything essential. There is nothing left to do. There is nowhere else to go. And in that simplicity, rest becomes effortless. Let it take you. This journey has never been about fixing yourself, becoming someone new, or reaching a hidden destination called peace. From the very first quiet moment, before sleep to the final letting go, the story has been pointing to a single, gentle truth: nothing essential is missing from you. We began by noticing how tired we truly are, not just in the body, but in the constant effort of holding life together. We saw how much weight we carry invisibly: expectations, identities, future plans, old fears. Not because we are weak, but because we learned that carrying them was necessary to survive, to belong, to matter. Zen did not ask us to throw these burdens away. It simply invited us to see them clearly, and in seeing, to begin loosening our grip. Along the way, we discovered that peace cannot be forced. Trying harder to relax only tightens the system. Effort, when aimed at calm, becomes another form of struggle. When we stopped demanding peace, it quietly revealed itself. We learned that nothing is wrong with us, that confusion, sadness, and uncertainty are not signs of failure, but signs of being human in a complex world. We watched thoughts come and go like weather, realizing we are not the storm, but the sky that holds it. We noticed how often we postpone peace to someday, unknowingly stealing life from the present. We saw the beauty of wanting less, not less life, but less resistance to life as it is. We learned that dark emotions are not enemies, but messengers asking for space and kindness. When we stopped fighting them, they softened on their own. Finally, we arrived at stillness, not as something created, but as something remembered. And in the end, even the search itself fell away. There was nothing left to do, nowhere left to go. Rest was no longer an achievement. It was simply allowed. The deepest lesson of this story is this: peace is not something you earn after life becomes perfect. Peace is what appears when you stop arguing with the moment you are in. To apply this in daily life, start small and gentle. Notice when you are tightening mentally or physically, and ask yourself if effort is truly needed right now. Practice allowing emotions instead of fixing them. When thoughts race, remember they are weather, not commands. Let rest be rest, without guilt. And most importantly, stop postponing yourself. You don't need a better version of your life to feel grounded. You need a kinder relationship with the one you are already living. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of this story resonated with you the most? Have you noticed where you've been trying too hard, or waiting for someday to feel at peace? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments, so we can all learn from one another. And if this kind of reflection helps you slow down, sleep deeper, and reconnect with yourself, please subscribe to the channel Buddhism in Every Moment. Your support truly matters. It gives us the motivation to keep creating meaningful, calming content for nights like this, and many more to come.